How's everyone doing today? Thanks for joining me for our virtual cooking class today. So if you're joining me live, it's a Monday and like the hardest of all Mondays because we had daylight savings time this past weekend, springing forward. So we are going to keep it really simple today. I'm Kate Watson, a registered dietitian with Live Life Well Employee Wellbeing here at Cone Health. And this version of the class is going to be recorded on our Live Life Well YouTube channel as well, and you can get the recipe down in the description box. So thank you all who are joining me live today. We are going to be making buffalo cauliflower wings and homemade ranch dipping sauce to go with that. So this is a great option for game days, appetizers, a nice side item. It is not going to taste like chicken wings, but it is going to be a really yummy buffalo crispy crunch. And I think these are just delicious. So I've already washed my hands as well as my produce. I actually took off my jewelry today, so any rings or anything you're wearing for this one, we might get a little messy. So let's jump right into it. So I've preheated my oven to 450, and we're going to go ahead and cut up our cauliflower. So I've got a whole head of cauliflower here. I've just rinsed it off and patted it dry. We're going to take off the greenery here. I'm just going to do it with my hands. And then we're going to chop off the base and then cut this up into florets to bake in the oven. All right, so let me know in the chat box if you have any questions or comments as we go along. And I'd also love to hear what your favorite game day snack or appetizer is, as well as maybe what's your sport or team of choice. So we're going to take a nice large chef's knife because I've got a nice large head of cauliflower here. We're going to first carefully remove the stem and the rest of the greenery that I didn't pull off by hand. All right, so once we've got that off, now we can lay our cauliflower flat on our cutting board. And I'm just going to start by cutting it into quarters, and then that way we can get in there and start to just kind of naturally pull apart our florets. So again, cauliflower is going to be very similar to broccoli in that we're going to remove some of this stem material. It is edible, but for this recipe, we just want these nice sized florets. And really importantly, since we're roasting this in the oven, we want to cut these about the same size so that everything's going to cook evenly. So this is actually a little large. I think something like this is going to be perfect. So I'm going to set that on my baking sheet. Now I'm using parchment paper, and I did go ahead and do an extra layer of insurance that it's not going to stick with a little bit of cooking spray, but just a little bit of cooking spray for this recipe will be perfect so that these can roast up nice and crispy without sticking to our baking sheet. So I'm just going to be kind of rustic with this cut, nothing fancy, just pulling off naturally those little florets as they fall apart and putting them onto my baking sheet. All right. Let's see, maybe a couple more. Oh, and so I am leaving, I want it to kind of look like a chicken wing. So I'm leaving a good amount of the stem and then the, more fuller part. So it's going to look like a little drumstick. Okay. All right. So that's probably good. Maybe one more. Maybe one more. All right. So we've got that. I'm going to put the rest of these to the side, out of the way. So the next thing we're going to do is create our batter. And so we're going to dip our whole cauliflower in the batter. That's what's going to get nice and crispy in the oven. All right. So let's get a bowl here, and we're going to just simply mix together some flour and water for our batter. So it calls for a half a cup of all-purpose flour. Right. And a half a cup of water, which I've measured out here. I'm going to make a little flurry, a little batter. If you want to add even a little dash of hot sauce to the batter, you can do that. We're going to obviously coat this in a buffalo sauce later, but I'm going to go ahead and do a little dash here. And then we're going to add some spices. So we're just going to do some garlic powder and some onion powder. So we want to make sure we're using the powder and not the garlic salt, just to, reduce the sodium here. So I'm going to do 1/4 teaspoon of each of these into our batter. And y'all know me, I don't really measure my spices. I like a little extra spice, a little extra flavor. So you can kind of season this to taste. So meaning, what your preference is. And we're going to add a little bit of onion powder as well. All right, so let's whisk this all together. And so I've got the buffalo sauce in there, so it's going to have a little bit of a color to it. Otherwise, it would just be a white batter. And so it's going to feel pretty thick, and it's going to be where it sticks to your whisk or your spoon, but it's still going to be able to drip off of there. So you don't want it too thick. If you need to make it thinner, then you just add a little bit of water until you get the consistency that you want. So remember, we already did 1/2 cup of water. If you need a little bit more, you can do that. All right, so we're gonna dip our cauliflower into this batter. So, a little secret about me, I worked for Chick-fil-A for like 7 years, all through undergrad, during my summers between high school and between undergrad and graduate. And we do at Chick-fil-A, we batter the chicken in-house. So the fried chicken is, it comes in raw chicken, and we would put it into a milk wash and then into the breading and then into the fryer. So I learned very quickly that it's helpful to have a wet hand and a dry hand. So you may know this trick. Anytime you're dipping and especially then breading, which we're not doing today, but it's really helpful to have one wet hand, one dry hand, meaning that one hand stays clean and you can do whatever you need to, and one hand is going into the wet batter and doing anything that touches the wet ingredients, okay? Now, another option, very smart, is just to use a pair of tongs. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take our cauliflower, again, dry it off as best you can. We're gonna dip it into that batter, roll it around, and really I'm just gonna toss a few of these in here, roll them around in the batter. And once we get it nice and coated, we're gonna put it, see, I want a really nice thick coating. Take off the excess, put it on our baking sheet. All right. Do my other handful here. So yes, if you need any insider Chick-fil-A secrets, hit me up. I've probably got an answer for you. I hear all kinds of crazy rumors. They cook their chicken in pickle juice and all this stuff. It's not true. But I had a lot of fun working for Chick-fil-A. So yes, I still eat there. I never got tired of it. But today we're doing non-chicken alternatives. So this is a great way to get an extra serving of veggies in. But it's delicious. We don't even have to talk about all of that. We don't even have to talk about how it's a lovely vegan recipe. We can just enjoy a nice, crispy, crunchy buffalo flavored snack. All right, so I'm done with our batter there. Just gonna set this in the sink. We're gonna throw these in the oven. Again, it's at 450. We're gonna let these roast for about 10 minutes so that this coating gets nice and crunchy and hardened. And then we're going to bring them back out, dip them in or brush them or dip them with our buffalo seasoning, and then pop them back in the oven to get extra crispy. So let's go ahead and put these in 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your oven. So I'm putting my timer on for 10 minutes, then we'll check them. And we're going to go ahead and get started on our buffalo sauce. So this one's pretty simple as well. We're just going to have our hot sauce, and then we've got some melted butter, and then a pinch of salt. So I'm going to get a small bowl for that. So we're going to do 1/4 cup of hot sauce. And I'm using Frank's Red Hot Wing Sauce Buffalo. They have a mild version. Any buffalo sauce you like will do. All right. It's clear because we're going to cut a few more things. I'm going to pour in my melted butter. I just used a tablespoon of unsalted butter here. and then just a pinch of salt. You can omit this. I'm just going to do a tiny little sprinkle since I'm doing unsalted butter. All right, and then we're going to mix this together. And so it's just going to look slightly lighter than the original buffalo. And then we'll set this to the side when our cauliflower comes out. Then we'll be able to brush this on or just dip them in there as well, okay? So while we're waiting, we're going to do our homemade ranch dipping sauce. I'm just going to wipe my station clear here. Let me check our comments before I keep going here. Oh, work in an air fryer. Yes, this recipe would absolutely work in an air fryer. I don't own an air fryer, but it would be a perfect recipe for that. Absolutely. Yeah, great question. And air fryer setting on toaster oven. Oh, I do have a toaster oven. I'll have to see. I don't know. It's a little older. I don't know if I'll have an air fryer setting on that one or not. All right, awesome. So we're going to make our homemade ranch. So I've got a fourth a cup of our sour cream here. And then I'm going to do 3/4 cup of plain yogurt with it. Now, if you made homemade ranch before, there's a couple different ways to do it. And it's really just depending on your taste preferences, how healthy you want to make it with substitutions. And then the thickness that you want. So if you want more of a dip like we're doing today, you're going to want to use some thicker components. And if you're wanting more like a dressing, then you're going to want to use thinner components. So, you know, this is going to be pretty thick, but if I need to thin it out, I can always add water. So I tend to go on the thicker side and then thin it out for my dip. And really the same for my dressing too, because I've made some ranch dressings that have been too thin also. So I like to start a little bit thicker and then thin out with water. So we're going to add in our plain yogurt. Now you can use Greek yogurt. This one I'm doing just plain regular yogurt. Gonna mix that in there. And then we are going to do our own ranch seasoning. So instead of a pre-bought packet of ranch seasoning, we're going to create our own here today. So we're going to simply do a tablespoon each of parsley, chives, dill weed, and onion powder. And then we will add in a teaspoon each of garlic powder and ground pepper. So we're going to put this all on top, stir it together, see what we're thinking about taste and consistency, and adjust as needed. So this is one of those recipes that, you know, I am a recipe follower. My husband laughs at me because he is not. He throws things together in the kitchen and it comes out great somehow. I follow a recipe to the T most of the time, other than my spices, where I am constantly referring back to my recipe. And I will use substitutions, but I usually Google them, make sure I'm doing the appropriate substitution amounts. So I like a recipe. That being said, it took me some time to get comfortable in adjusting recipes to what I have on hand and using up what I already have in my pantry and my fridge, being comfortable changing out, you know, spices or the types of fat to make it healthier, finding ways to cut back on salt and added sugar. So be willing to experiment a little bit. If you're a recipe follower like me, make notes on your recipes so that when you have your tried and true recipes and you're changing them up, make notes so that you know what you did the last time that turned out good, right? Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and measure out our tablespoons of each of the main spices. So this is our dill weed. Gonna start to smell good in here, nice and ranchy. So I'm a big ranch person, and as you may know, it's not really a secret, ranch is not the healthiest thing. So finding things that you really enjoy, and instead of cutting them out for the sake of being healthier, finding ways to prepare them in a healthier way, to make them your own instead of buying them at the store. This ranch spice blend, seasoning blend, is saving me 560 milligrams of sodium for every quarter of a teaspoon. So obviously I'm making more, but if you buy one of those ranch seasoning packets, it's 560 milligrams of sodium for a quarter teaspoon of that seasoning packet, not even the whole seasoning packet. So that is easily over our daily amount of sodium recommended for heart health when we're using one of those packets. So creating this myself, saving us on sodium. And then when we think about the like jarred ranch dressing, this recipe is going to save us a lot of calories and saturated fat. But I still get that ranch flavor that I love. Okay. If you'd rather do blue cheese with this recipe, feel free. All right. So I've got my parsley, chives, stillweed. We're going to do onion powder in here as well. Tablespoon of that. So we recently did a seasoning blend make and take event for ITS in Greensboro. And it went really well. We had so much fun. We used a homemade seasoning blend recipe where they could choose to do ranch seasoning, taco seasoning, or chili seasoning. My onion powder's not wanting to come out. There we go. And so I also really love making my own taco seasoning. In fact, I don't ever buy taco seasoning packets anymore because it's so easy to make at home, and I have all the spices for it on hand all the time. So no reason to have to run out and buy a seasoning packet for that. We also had a chili seasoning option. So, you know, these are little events that when departments ask us to come for an event, Live Life Well, we love to come out and see you guys in person now and be a part of your bigger events. So reach out to us at livelifewell@conehealth.com. Invite us to your next event. Let us come hang out with your department. And we're happy to bring like a fun activity to do, such as our make and take seasoning blend activity that we did recently. All right, last thing for this is ground pepper. And we're going to do a teaspoon of that. Here's my teaspoon. Sorry, not last thing. I've also got to put my garlic powder in here. All right, there's my pepper and garlic powder. Okay, there we are. So we're just going to blend this up. I'm just going to use a spoon for this one. Smells good. Basically, I smell that dill weed. That's like that classic ranch smell, I feel like, is coming from that dill weed. Okay, so as I mix this, you're going to see, you know, obviously I want some good like color from those herbs. You can absolutely use a whole clump of my onion powder in there. You can absolutely use fresh herbs as well instead of dried. Okay, so you can see we've got good color to that. So what I'm going to do is give this a taste and see if I need to add a pinch of salt. Do I need to add any more of my seasonings? I think this consistency is pretty good as far as a dipping sauce, and actually not too bad. You know, I can thin it out for a dressing if I have leftovers and I'm not going to use it all as dipping sauce. So let's do a little taste here. Okay, it's really good. The consistency is really good. The tang from the sour cream is right on. I am going to do a pinch of salt because of that tang. And also, to be honest, like I would put a little bit of lemon juice in this if I had a lemon. I think that would be really good, and just to balance the like earthiness of the spices, because it's pretty earthy in there right now. So I'm thinking this salt will help balance that out. And our timer just went off for our cauliflower. Perfect timing. So I'm gonna put this to the side, let this marinate together, and then I'll give it another taste. Let's pull out our cauliflower. Oh yes, that looks perfect. So I just did 10 minutes. It looks great. See where my tongs are before I burn myself here. Well, that's got wet batter on it. So let me grab another utensil here. Let's see. Another pair of tongs. Okie doke. So we've got a nice crispy batter. If I can figure out how to open these. All right. You can see how much that has crisped up, where it just comes right off of the parchment paper. So that's what we want. We want a nice, hard, crispy coating on there. See that? Yum, they're gonna be so crunchy and delicious. I'm so excited. Okay, so we're gonna do our buffalo seasoning and pop them back in, and then we'll get our plating together. So let's go ahead and take our buffalo sauce that we prepared, and you can either brush it on or you can dip them back in here. Because these came out so good and solid, I'm just gonna dip them in. If they were a little bit more wet or mushy still, obviously I'd put them back in for 5 more minutes, but I could use something like a basting brush to just spread that buffalo sauce over. But since I've got plenty of buffalo sauce, I'm gonna just dip it right in there. So I'm just dipping it in my bowl here, getting it fully coated. And then I'm gonna plop it back on this parchment paper. All right. So this is a fun, like messy recipe to get your kids involved in too. Like there's no raw eggs, there's no, ingredients that would be, something you'd have to be watching them, what they're doing with their hands and, if they're touching their face or putting in their mouth. Nothing like that to be worried about. Now you might want to do a mild sauce for sure if they're not big on spicy. But this is a fun, just like messy activity for them to help with. And anytime we get our kids in the kitchen cooking, they're more likely to try things. So something like cauliflower, that might be like a definite no food for them. If they're making it like this in a new fun way and they got to help make it and see the process and taste as they went along and just, having a fun activity to do with mom or dad, they might be more likely to try it. And then, in my experience, kids love anything with a dip. Are your kids like that? Were your kids like that? Are you like that? Because I feel like for my 4-year-old, like if it's got a dip with it, if it's got a sauce with it, okay, we're good, right? Like they're all about that. So since we're going to be also doing like a homemade ranch dip with this, might be something they're more willing to try, and it's a fun way to get a veggie in without having to have any food fights about it, All right, so there's our last one. Plop that there and make sure not to burn myself. Here's what we're looking like. There you go. Pop that in for 5 more minutes. I'm doing top rack today. I don't know. I was just feeling top rack. I think you could do middle rack and it would be just fine because, again, we are roasting. We are not broiling today. So broiling again would be just the top of the oven heated. So this is the whole oven heated. Do that for 5 more minutes. Let's go ahead and get our plate ready so that when those come out, we'll be ready to taste. So I'm going to take a nice bright green colored plate here. We are going to dip some of our dipping sauce into the bowl. And if it didn't have as much color as it does, I would maybe sprinkle some of the fresh herbs on top, but this actually looks really lovely and festive just like it is. So just plated that. Let's have one more taste just to see. I think I would have gone a little less on the dillweed and the chives, but the salt really helped it out. That was actually really good. Really good. I'll probably just cut back a little bit on the, it's the texture for me. It's the stringiness of the dillweed. So maybe if I'd gone fresh or if I'd gone finer ground, but the flavor's good. Okay, we're gonna, just like we would serve our chicken wings, right? We're gonna have some celery and carrots. So let's chop this up. I've already washed my celery. I'm gonna cut off the stalk end that I don't want. I'm gonna cut off the end that's textured and dirty, and then just cut this into celery sticks. And then I've also got some baby carrots. I I like to get fresh carrots and cut them myself, but we've got baby carrots today. My son really likes these, so we're gonna plate those. All right. Let's check the comments here before I pull our cauliflower back out. Best seasoning on the table works every time. Yeah, I know. Ranch just goes with everything in my world. I don't know. It's kind of a problem. All right, so while we're waiting on our cauliflower, let's talk about a few other, healthy alternatives to a dipping sauce like ranch, for example. So, obviously, making it this way, it's a really healthy way to do it and to get that craving. If we're talking about dressings, typically we recommend oil-based dressings instead of the creamier-based dressings. These creamier ones in a bottle, anyway, tend to have more of that saturated fat, which is not so good for our heart. And that's typically from our animal fats, which include the dairy products that go into those more creamy dressings, right? So trying to limit saturated fat, we could go for a more oil-based dressing like our balsamic vinaigrettes, our light Italians, and those are going to have oils that are much healthier for our heart. So they still have a lot of fat. They still can add up in calories rather quickly. They also may have some added sugars for flavoring, so you got to look out for that in the bottled versions. Those added sugars can really get a little ridiculous in the pre-bought kind of dressings from the store. But generally, we're going to have unsaturated fats, which are not going to hurt our cholesterol and our heart health. So we just want to watch the portion for the amount of calories that are still in those heart healthy fats. Of course, the best choice would be to make your own dressings at home. And they're super easy. It's a really simple equation. You just need some kind of acid, some kind of oil. So normally I would do a vinegar and an oil blend of some kind, some spices, and then if you want to add some citrus for additional acid, so some lemon juice or lime juice, you can make all kinds of combinations of dressings at home really quickly and easily, and then they're going to keep in your fridge for 3 to 5 days. So the trick is to make just the amount you're really going to need, so you're not wasting. That would be kind of the only downside of making it at home is that it's not going to be as shelf stable as a store-bought dressing. All right, so let's pull out this cauliflower, get it on the plate, and give it a try. So we just allowed that buffalo sauce to crisp up, and woo, you can smell that spice. So let's get it on our plate here. Some of our best pieces. Now, I will say one thing about this recipe is it doesn't reheat super well, so I really like to eat it right after I prepare it. If you were doing this for a game day, you could prep everything and then just pop it in the oven right before the event. So you could already have your batter made, already have your buffalo sauce made, and then assemble it all before you're going to serve it, because in my opinion, it doesn't reheat super well. I really like the crispy crunchiness that this has. And if you're doing this in an air fryer, that's going to simplify it for you too. So there's our finished plate of our buffalo cauliflower wings. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's give it a quick taste if it's not too hot. I think I can. Let's see here. It's really good, y'all. I think you're going to like it. Share it with your friends and family. And I'll see you next time. Hope y'all have a great day.